Today I'm going to share quite a controversial idea with you, which is that chronic fatigue and burnout is a gift. Okay, so I'm going to say that again. Chronic fatigue and burnout can be a profound gift, although it comes wrapped in a whole lot of barbed wire. And I'm sure if you're in the barbed wire phase, you're wondering, what the heck is she talking about? And I know that I certainly would have thought the same thing if someone had told me this in the worst part of my chronic fatigue and burnout, where I just felt like this was going to be my reality forever, that I couldn't even remember what normal felt like anymore, and it impacted every single aspect of my life, so that I just felt useless, I felt despondent, I felt frustrated, just really mad with the world. And so I get it if you're there, but now I can tell you from the other side that chronic fatigue and burnout was one of, if not the most transformative experiences in my life. The Fatigue to Flow podcast offers a deep, transformative approach to healing burnout and chronic fatigue, going beyond surface level fixes like stress management or supplements. We explore the real roots, nervous system imbalance, harmful psychological patterns, and the mind-body connection. Chronic fatigue isn't just a condition, it's an opportunity for awakening to your greatest self. Each episode blends personal experience with practical tools. If you're ready for lasting vitality, joy, and flow, this episode is for you. Chronic fatigue and burnout was one of, if not the most transformative experiences in my life. It massively changed the trajectory of my life in a very, very positive way. It not only shifted how I see myself, and obviously shifted my health, it shifted my sense of being so fully alive in the world, it's changed my relationships, it had a massive impact on my knowing of why I'm here and what I want to do in my life. It's brought up more passion and joy. There's just so much. There's so much that has come out of this journey. And that is why I'm so passionate about sharing what I share, because when you're in the worst of it, like many of you are, you can really feel like there's no hope. And I promise you there's so much hope if you choose to work with it consciously. Okay, so I'm going beyond just taking some supplements and finding a quick fix. Unfortunately, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is if you choose to see this as an opportunity to bring major transformation into your life and to go inwards and do the work, it can be profoundly healing and profoundly transformative. Like I mentioned, not only did it change many aspects of my life, physically in my relationship, but it also impacted my purpose. So I was already a psychologist and a body talk practitioner when I was diagnosed in 2013 with adrenal fatigue syndrome. So I don't necessarily agree with that diagnosis. At the end of the day, let's just stick with chronic fatigue. I mean, that was the experience of it. And it's all also about dysregulated nervous systems, which I'm going to share. So when I was diagnosed in 2013, I finally was able to start slowly seeing clients again. And what I noticed was really interesting. I started to attract so many very exhausted, mainly women, into my practice. So exhausted and overwhelmed were the two big things. Exhausted, overwhelmed, and feeling very out of control. And so as I healed alongside these beautiful women, I started to notice many similarities and similar stages we had to go through. And it was so informative for me and has really been foundational to my coaching. But right at the beginning, what I began to notice is that many of my clients shared very similar personality characteristics. And of course, I also had many of those. And so just bear with me here, because it's not as simple as just we all, oh, you are this type of personality. I'm going to share with you why that has relevance to chronic fatigue and burnout. But just in a nutshell, and I called this the holding personality because it was really about a whole lot of holding. What I mean by that is holding a whole lot up in the air, like holding all of these balls. These were people who were perfect, who were determined, who were motivated, who were driven, who were achievement focused, always needing to be on the go. And so there was that aspect of holding everything together, being capable, being responsible, and always being perceived that way by the outside world as well. Like, oh my gosh, she's really got all her shit together. Excuse the swear word, but I can't think of a better word right now. But it's that way of being seen, right? And the holding is not just that kind of holding. There's also often inner holding of holding it all together inside, because on the outside I look this way, perfect and got it all together. On the inside I feel like I'm falling apart, but I can't feel it. So I hold it all together really, really tightly and push it all down. Okay, so that's often going on. There's often a whole lot of holding for other people. So a lot of trying to fix and solve and rescue. And there's also often people pleasing that goes alongside with it. And there's a few other aspects to this, but these are the major sort of things that I was seeing in most of my clients. So I got really curious because I was like wondering why is this, what has this got to do with chronic fatigue and burnout? Now, what's important to understand here is that our personalities are shaped by our childhood experiences. So our childhoods, this is very important to just frame here. I just want you to all know that, especially for those of you who feel, but my parents were great and they were loving. And in that case, I have no doubt they were. But I want you to understand is that our caregivers always did the best they could with what they had. In other words, if they were wounded, if they had had trauma during their childhood or had not been emotionally supported or met or seen or fully acknowledged during their childhood experiences, they didn't have the capacity to do that as parents, as caregivers. Some of them, unfortunately, would have even, it would have then led to them actually perpetrating trauma themselves on a much greater level, like outright neglect, sexual abuse, physical abuse, because of their own experiences of that kind of trauma. But I'm speaking here mainly to those people who feel like, well, my childhood was perfect. So many of my clients come and tell me that, and in many ways, I have no doubt that your parents would have, or your caregivers, met your physical needs well. But I do want to ask you how well your emotional needs were met. Because like I said, in most cases of the clients that I've seen, they had very similar childhood experiences, which were that they were often not emotionally held and supported. So we can only feel safe in the world and stay present in our bodies and with our emotions if, as children, we had the experience of being supported and seen and held in that space, where we had parents who could say, I'm sorry, it's so hard. You're going to be okay. Not, I'll give you something to cry about, or go to your room until you feel better to come out, or stop being silly, whatever it might have been, or just disconnecting and walking away, or shoving some food in your mouth, or sticking in front of a TV. These were all ways that wounded parents who were being activated by the feelings and emotions in their children would then respond because they couldn't manage what was being felt in themselves. Okay. Now, trauma is described by Dr. Valerie Rain as any experience in which you did not feel safe to be your authentic self. Let me repeat that. Any experience where it did not feel safe to be your authentic self. Now, how many times have you as parents, if you are parents, had one of those days where you've got so much on your plates and your child goes, Mommy, and you say, what? Right? My husband did it to me the other day. I was really busy with children's stuff and he called me from outside and I responded like that. And I was like, I'm sorry, love. Yes, what is it? Okay, so We may have experienced as children that our needs were upsetting and were overwhelming for our caregivers. And so we may have then learned to suppress our feelings. This is one of many ways in which we learn to adapt ourselves, because at the end of the day, our primal needs meant that we needed to be loved, we needed to belong, we wanted to feel enough, and we needed to be supported. Okay? Because if those things didn't happen, there's a pretty good chance we wouldn't make it. Especially the physical support part. So on many levels, there's this belief system, I have to be enough and have to be loved so that I will be supported. Okay, so it's like this idea of conditions, because many of us grew up with conditions. If you are good, you can give this, and when you're bad, that's what happens. As opposed to, I'm sorry you're battling so much, I still love you and you're still good enough. Even if you're feeling really angry right now, I still love you and you're still good enough. Okay, that didn't happen for the majority of us, because our parents didn't experience that. And let me tell you, I'm a parent now, a supposedly conscious parent, and I still battle to do that. Okay, it's not easy. But for those of us who had that experience, we had to then learn to adapt ourselves and bring in unconscious, because this isn't conscious, but we were so flippin' clever that we unconsciously brought in coping mechanisms so that we would feel worthy, so that we'd feel loved, so that we'd belong, and so we'd be supported. So these involved suppressing our needs. It involved not making a big fuss about things and suppressing our emotions. It involved striving and achieving, because when we strived and achieved, that's when we felt like we were in control, and that's often when we would have been seen and heard and acknowledged. So we were seen and heard and acknowledged when we did well and when we were good, but not when you made a fuss and not when you had big feelings, right? Okay, so you learn then to do more of that and less of that. We may have modeled our parents, we may have modeled how they responded by disconnecting and dissociating and shutting down. Maybe they numbed out with food or with the TV or video games or work, right? Maybe we modeled how they were always striving and achieving and doing, because we realized that that's what was important to them, so it must be important for us to do the same thing. Okay, so through modeling and through the subtle responses and not so subtle responses of our caregivers to our own behaviors, we start to learn what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, and we adapt ourselves to conform. And it's not just our caregivers, let me just say that right up front. It's society, like the societal norms about what is, even our adverts, if you look at them, like if you're not achieving, if you're not able to do what you want to do, pop a Barocca or whatever it might be, because you should be producing and productive all the time. And of course you should be, because that's going to help to maintain our capitalist society and profits, right? Imagine we all had to stop doing that. Okay, so can you see how subtle the dominant culture is around being busy, producing, succeeding, achieving, being a good girl, don't make a fuss? And the messaging for women, and this is going to be even more so for women of color, is that you need to be a good girl and you need to fit in and don't make a fuss. And this gets ingrained in our very, very, very cells of our being. Okay, so we then become, we adapt and we form this holding personality, and this holding personality becomes who we are. It's our default, and we don't question it, because it's just what we've always known, and because we wouldn't dare to risk trying anything outside of that, because it really didn't feel safe when we were a child to do that. Unfortunately, it's just so very, very exhausting to maintain. But I just want to share a story with you quickly. I don't know whether you believe in astrology or not, but I've found that it's profoundly, it can be really, really to the point, okay? In terms of having your chart done around your different aspects of your personality, depending on where that your different planets lie, when you were born, etc. I can't explain the nitty-gritty of it, but basically, I had my chart done when I was 18, and at that point, I was well entrenched as a good girl, and I didn't resonate very much with my chart. I resonated with the part that said that I would be a carer and work with people, because that originated from my need to rescue. now I do it far more consciously, and I'm very aware of when my rescuing tendencies are coming in, so that I don't do it from that place. That was one thing I resonated with. A lot of it I didn't resonate with. And then a little bit later, like let's say it was about 7 or 8 years ago, I had my chart done again, and I resonated with quite a lot more of it. But this time, there was what kept coming up was spontaneity, and I was like, have you got the right person? because the one thing I battled with was spontaneity. Because I was so like rigid and planning, I planned everything, and I was trying to control everything. I now know that a lot of what I did as a child and as a young adult was to manage my neurodivergent nervous system as well. And in fact, many of my clients battle with a form of neurodivergence, or just just having a general sensitive nervous system. So many of these coping adaptations are also part of neurodivergence. And just to say that in many cases, our caregivers would have been neurodivergent as well. Okay, so it actually all feeds into it anyway. And so spontaneity was not safe for me, and I did not resonate. But now I can see absolutely that is who I am. And in fact, in so many ways, I'm a completely different person to who I was in 2013, when I was first given my diagnosis of adrenal fatigue syndrome. So it's amazing, actually, and I now feel so much more alive and real and authentic. And I was already a psychologist and a body talk practitioner back then in 2013. I thought I knew who I was. I'd been in years of therapy, but it took my burning out and my chronic fatigue and my healing journey to become super conscious of the fact that I was suppressing a whole lot of me, and it was exhausting. Okay, so let's talk about how chronic fatigue and exhaustion comes on the back of all this holding. So firstly, it takes a lot of energy, right? It takes a lot of energy to maintain these holding patterns, as I like to call them. It takes a lot of energy to be in control, to plan and organize, to be perfect, to rescue, to fix, to be on top of everything all the time, to be achieving all the time. Okay, there's nothing wrong with those qualities. There's nothing wrong with them. But if we're doing them unconsciously to feel safe, then they're usually done to an extreme, and we're disconnected, and then they're not good for us. There's nothing wrong with doing them consciously while listening to our bodies, to constantly have feedback around, does this feel good for me or not? Okay, so it's exhausting to maintain those holding personalities, those holding traits. Also, what we're doing when we're trying to be that person we believe we should be, is we're suppressing that person we truly are. And to that also takes a lot of energy, because we're constantly hypervigilant. We're constantly watching ourselves. We're constantly watching other people and their responses to ourselves. And we are literally trying to keep a lid on everything. Like that part of you that wants to have this response, that, don't you do that, right? No, that's not appropriate. Don't do that. Put a lid on it. So we're using a lot of energy to suppress ourselves. Okay, so there's that going on. When there's a massive body and mind connection. So our psychological state and our energetic, emotional state impacts our physical health. So when we are constantly suppressing and holding, and there's contraction in our body, it impacts our physical state as a child, and it actually impacts our musculoskeletal alignments and our body health. Because, as my osteopath used to love to say to me, is form dictates function. And then for me, I had torsion in my spine, so like a twisting, a bit of scoliosis, which I still have. I'm slowly starting to unwind. Shoulders up, constant tightness in my neck, a very, very tight stomach muscles, like holding in. I don't know how that came. It's all related to also not breathing in fully, because we're afraid of taking in life through the breath. So there's often tension around the diaphragm. There's many ways it can play out. And then it impacts our capacity to breathe. It impacts our circulation, nerve supply, impacts our metabolism. and it impacts our vitality. Okay. And then what is related also to this body-mind connection, and is so, so very important, is that nervous system dysregulation goes hand in hand with this, with a holding personality. So what happens is, as children, when we're not feeling 100% safe to be ourselves as we are, and we start to put these trauma adaptations in place, we also create a template for our nervous systems. And this template, so to keep it really simple, let's say there's 3 levels. It's a bit more complex in this. I'll speak to this in another episode. But we're wanting to stay in this nicely rested state as much as possible. We can't always be there because there are demands in life, and we need to have a stress activation to be able to meet those demands. Deadlines, traffic, a car accident in front of us, whatever it might be. We need to at times go into a stress response. But we want to spend the most of our time in that rested state, because that is where healing is possible and that is where energy is produced. When we become dysregulated, we spend way too much time because we too easily go into either an activated state where it's the fight-flight response, or we go into a shutdown state. And then we spend too much time there and don't easily come back into that rested state. So that is what dysregulation means. And it means that we generally spend a lot of time feeling like we're in danger. Okay? It's low grade a lot, like we don't even realize it. I remember the day. I remember vividly when it was probably about a year and a half into my chronic fatigue. It was about 2 years, where I suddenly thought, I don't think I've ever felt truly safe. I don't remember. Okay, I would have felt safe as a young child, but as I started to become more conscious and aware, I immediately developed a belief system that the world is not a safe place. And I responded with a nervous system that was aligned to that. And I didn't know. I didn't know that. I was a psychologist, a body talk practitioner. I'd been in therapy. I didn't know that was what I believed. And that was what I felt. It was just my state of being. It was my default. And so our nervous systems can stay like that for so much of our lives, and we have no clue. And here's the thing, is that when our nervous systems are dysregulated, it impacts when our nervous systems are activated, when we have a stress response, changes happen in our body that are very necessary so we can have that stress response. For instance, our blood vessels dilate so we can have more blood to the extremities and to our muscles so that we can fight or run. Our vision changes. We need more sugar and energy, so there'll be a change in the way we use our blood sugar, and there's changes in the pancreas and changes in the liver. Our lungs, our breathing will change because of our need to respond to stress. Now that's fine and great and so adaptive, but if we stay in those places, most of the time, it alters our capacity. What happens is when we're in that place, or when our systems are in those places of responding in that way, we can't also be producing energy and healing. The two don't go. They're not mutually exclusive. They are mutually, whatever. They can't happen at the same time. That's what I'm trying to say. So even to the point that our mitochondria can only be in cell danger response or making energy. Okay? They cannot be doing the same thing at the same time. So when we are chronically dysregulated, we are physically unable to have vitality. And that massively depletes us. And it's more complex than that. In fact, in many ways, many of us actually are fine and healthy, but our perception switches our nervous systems to like stuck mode, where they're stuck in self-preservation state. I'll go more into this in another episode, but it's really fascinating. So to the degree that we're perceiving threat, to the degree we're not feeling safe, to the degree that we are adapting ourselves to meet these perceived threats, we are not going to be healthy. We're not going to be vital. So I just want to let that land. Like, that's a lot, right? Isn't that a lot to to know that you may have been living most of your life in a way that you thought was just your norm and actually may be hurting you. And here's the thing, is that our bodies give us feedback. Like, I like to say that they first start to whisper through symptoms, then they start to talk a bit louder, then they start to shout, and eventually our body will bring us to our knees so that we will listen, so that we'll realize that the way that we are living our life is not serving us anymore. It's not healthy, it's not helping. And most of us, the women I see, and sometimes men, that I see in my office space are people who weren't able to hear, and so their bodies had to go all out to let them know, stop, listen, you need to change, something needs to change. So that's why I'm here. I don't want you to be despondent by this message. I'm wanting to share hope. I'm wanting to let you know that there is possibility and so much potential in your current experience. And it's all about learning to work with it in a conscious way, a supported way, because you've got to change some patterns. You've got to change, I do it all myself. That needs to change. So many of my clients, I did it. I was like, oh, I can do this. I can do this. When I'm not well, I fix it. When things are not good, I fix it. Fix it mentality is not going to help here, because fix it mentality comes from trauma. It is a trauma response, a trauma adaptation, and it is more of a stress response. It's not going to help. It's wonderful that you are resourceful, but you actually need to be supported. People need support so that their nervous systems can let go and relax into I am held. And that's also part of co-regulation, and what many of us did not receive when we were in our childhoods, which is why our nervous systems are the way they are now. So it's about learning to receive support. It's about learning to put things down. It's about learning to surrender. It's about learning to trust. It's a very spiritual journey, very spiritual. So when I say transformative, it's massively spiritual in terms of how you see yourself and how you see others and how you see life and your role in life and how you feel. I mean, most of my clients may believe in something, but when they come down to it, really, they actually don't trust. They believe, but they don't trust that if they had to put everything down, that they'd be okay. This is also a big part of this. These are all the things that I address in my coaching, because this is what I started seeing coming up over and over and over again with my clients. That's why I created a quick 5-minute quiz to help you discover if you resonate with the holding personality, a set of traits that I've found common in many of my clients struggling with fatigue. So head over to kerrymagnus.net, that's no www, just kerrymagnus.net, and click Start Here to take the quiz. It might just be the missing piece you're looking for. I really, if anything, just hope that this has left you with a slightly different perspective about why you might be where you are. Instead of what has happened to me, what's wrong with me, I want you to hear what is possible. What is possible now? This has happened to you because you are ready. I truly, truly believe this. That happened to me because I was ready, because I hadn't been listening and I was ready to step up and up-level myself, and I was resisting it because I was terrified. And my body said, okay, well then I'm just going to have to pull out all the stops. Here we go. And there I was on my knees, unable to do anything, unable to function. And I tried to shortcut it. I tried to fix it all myself. I used all of my old coping mechanisms, and they didn't work. And eventually I started to realize there's a different way. I need to be doing this a different way. And so if you want help with that, if you want to know more about that, also just send me an email. Let's chat. Let's see what support can look like for you. If not, just let the seed that I've planted today just grow for you and see what needs to happen in your life, what it means for you. Take care, everyone. I believe in you. I believe that you are all empowered, amazing, strong, beautiful, beautiful people.